Okay, it is a packed house here tonight. So thank you for attending the meeting of the Westerville City Schools Board of Education. The agenda will be displayed on the screens in the front of the room for you to follow along. There will be 2 opportunities this evening to address the board, the first being agenda item 6.1. The first set of public comments is relative to agenda item 7.1 through 11.2. Please state the agenda items you're referencing at the beginning of your comments. The second opportunity is agenda item 12.1. There is a sign-up sheet located on the table at the back of the room, and each speaker will have 5 minutes to address the board, and a timer will be shown on the screen. And with that, Ms. Marshall, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Bell?
Here.
Mrs. Altman?
Here.
Dr. Nestor Baker and Mrs. Meyer are absent. Mrs. Davidson?
Here. Will you please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we do not have any district highlights or recognitions. We do not have any reports this evening. We are going to vote on the board meeting minutes at the next meeting. We do not have any public comments, which takes us to financials. So 7.1, Audit Committee.
It's just a notice.
Yep, I had to look, sorry.
Thank you, President Davidson, members of the board. So we do have one audit committee member that's not able to serve again this year, Sue Holschler. So she has informed us that she won't be returning. So we will have one opening on our audit committee. So tell your friends. We will post the opening by this Friday. We'll get it out with the news and announcements this Friday. We'll have a deadline to apply of October the 6th, and we will bring it back to the candidate back to the board for consideration on the October 23rd board meeting.
Great. Thank you. 7.2, a resolution to approve insurance premiums for the calendar year 2024. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Marshall, you want to tell us a little bit about this?
Yes, thank you again. So every year we set insurance premiums for the new year. So our plan year runs from January 1st to December 31st. So these will be effective for January 1st, 2024. Our medical plan represents a 13.2% increase. Our dental and insurance represents a 3.5% increase. And our vision insurance represents a 9.2% increase. I do want to make a note on the medical plan. 13.2% is a large increase. We've done relatively well over the years. Just looking back since 2020, we saw a 2.5% increase. In 2021, we had no increase at all. And then 22, we had a 6.8% increase. And in 23, we had a 5.4% increase. So we've been well under the industry average of around 9% for the last several years. So this is where we're at. Our claims have been really high, and that's where we need to be to continue to fund our self-insurance plan. I would like to also point out that we had not changed premiums for dental and vision insurance, and I couldn't even tell you the last time those rates were changed. It's been a very long time, so this is just the way the market is right now.
Okay. Any questions or comments? No. Hearing none.
Mr. Bell?
Yes.
Mrs. Altman?
Yes.
Mrs. Davidson?
Yes. 7.3, a resolution to approve the purchases in accordance with ORC 5705.41 and Board Policy 6320. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
And Ms. Marshall.
Me again, thank you. So these are what we call then and now purchase orders. We have 4 on this agenda. There are 2 for reimbursement for college coursework for College Credit Plus teachers that we did not have a purchase order open timely for the start of the courses due to our cutoff for our fiscal year 2023 purchase orders. The West Star purchase order was opened out of the fiscal year 2024 budget, but it was ordered in fiscal year 2023 in order to lock in pricing. And the Diamondback Golf LLC purchase order was not entered timely because the coach thought they had to wait to open a purchase order after the entry fees were applied. So just some misunderstanding there. Everything's been budgeted, so we do recommend the board's approval for those.
Any questions or comments?
No, thanks.
Hearing none?
Mrs. Altman?
Yes.
Mr. Bell?
Yes.
Mrs. Davidson?
Yes. And is it okay if we take the personnel consent agenda as one reading? Okay. May I have a motion for the personnel consent agenda for 8.1 through 8.12, please?
So moved.
Second?
And welcome, Mr. Cooper.
Hey, good evening, President Davidson, members of the board, Ms. Marshall, Mr. Hershiser. This evening's personnel consent agenda includes action with regard to resignations, retirements, leaves of absence, one-time pays, and employment decisions. I would like to highlight our two retirees on the agenda this evening. Sheila Miller is an assistant manager in our food service department and will be retiring after 20 years of service. Lynn Holland will also be retiring at the end of this school year after 22 years of service to the district. We appreciate all they've done for our students and community and certainly wish them the best in their years ahead. At this time, I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Well, congratulations to our retirees. Yeah, we just appreciate the many years of service in all the different areas that, they
Absolutely.
represent. So thank you for that. And I always just have to ask how we're holding on bus drivers.
I think we're doing okay overall. I mean, they are making it work every day, and we appreciate all of the work that goes into that on a
Yes.
daily basis. It is not an easy job by any means to make that work every single day. So we appreciate all the work of our drivers, the mechanics, as well as our transportation department and all of the workers within that department.
Yes, many, many thanks to them and to the trainers for getting new drivers
Absolutely.
on board this year.
Yes.
Yeah, many thanks.
Yep. Okay.
Mr. Bell?
Yes.
Mrs. Altman?
Yes.
Mrs. Davidson?
Yes. We do not have any old business tonight, which takes us to new business. So first reading for 10.1, Policy 3120.08, Employment of Personnel for Co-curricular and Extracurricular Activities. Mr. Cooper's back. And if you want to take all three, you can.
Yes, actually, the first three policies, 312008, 412008, and 8120, do contain parallel language. This reflects current Ohio Revised Code and recent legislative changes. The legislative changes come with the intent of further promoting student safety and care, and I don't think any of us would argue with wanting to make sure that our students are safe whenever possible and however we can continue to promote that. However, it does, I do think it's important to point out that as well as those legislative changes, while they create additional requirements, it does make it more cumbersome for some of our staff members to continue to increase the number of trainings and things that they will cover. So we do want to make sure that we provide those opportunities for our students. With that said, we are grateful to those who are able and willing to get all of those trainings accomplished and want to continue to ensure that we have a variety of experiences for our kids. And so thank you to all those who continue to work on those trainings that are required. We want to keep our kids safe, and yet there continue to be more and more trainings that are required each year. So it's a lot to keep up with, and we just appreciate all the work that they do.
Any questions or comments?
Nope.
Okay, hearing none. 10.4, first reading for Policy 6700, Fair Labor Standards Act.
And so with Policy 6700, it does align to the Fair Labor Standards Act, and it does include recommended language specifically that you're reading here with regard to reasonable break time for nursing mothers.
Mm-hmm.
There's some clarification of language. If you recall, we did have this in this past winter, December of 22, that we looked at this and made some adjustments. They have some further clarification of language that is coming to you with this first reading here.
Any questions or comments? Okay, hearing none. Thank you so much. Recommended action, 11.1, resolution for impracticality of transportation. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
And Ms. Dennis is with us. Welcome.
Well, good evening, President Davidson, members of the board, Mr. Hershiser, and Ms. Marshall. Ohio law allows for public schools to determine the impracticality of transportation after considering a number of factors such as the cost of providing transportation and the number of students to be transported. Before you is a list containing 41 students that have been deemed impractical to transport. Our Department of Purchasing Logistics has evaluated each listed private school student per the requirements of Section 3327.02 of the Ohio Revised Code and declared the listed students impractical to transport. Approving this resolution would allow the district to offer payment in lieu of transportation in a manner provided for per the Ohio Revised Code at the rate determined by the Ohio Department of Education. Have any questions?
I think it's just important to reiterate why we see this, right? That we are required to consider, required to provide transportation, but there's payment in lieu is a possibility. So these are the circumstances where we've decided it's impractical for us to transport. They'll receive payment in lieu of transportation, but that we are required
Yes.
to transport these students.
And each is
or provide
evaluated.
payment.
Each of the school locations is evaluated at the time of request.
Yeah, I just think that's not well understood, so.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks
Absolutely.
for clarifying.
Of course.
Mrs. Altman?
Yes.
Mr. Bell?
Yes.
Mrs. Davidson?
Yes. 11.2, out-of-state and overnight field trips. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
And welcome, Ann Baldwin.
Good evening, President Davidson, members of the board, Mr. Hershiser, Ms. Miller. I have one out-of-state field trip request for you to consider this evening. This is for sixth grade students and families of Heritage Middle School to go to New York City. It will be this summer, right after the school year ends, at the very end of May, so students wouldn't miss any school. And a teacher is organizing and chaperoning the trip. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Is it a theater trip? Is that?
It is not. It's a student experience trip, and we've had some of our sixth grade teachers take students in the past on different trips once they get to middle school and have that opportunity.
Okay, cool. Any other questions? Hearing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Bell?
Yes.
Mrs. Altman?
Yes.
Mrs. Davidson?
Yes. We do not have any public comments this evening, which takes us to board comments. Does anyone have any comments this evening?
I just have just a brief one, which is that we're getting to that time of year when everyone's starting to settle in a little bit. And just one of the things that I feel like starts to bubble up around this time of year as kids establish patterns is that some kids might be coming home and saying, like, so-and-so is saying things to me that aren't, nice, or somebody's picking on me, and they're starting to feel like there's a pattern. So we think about, bullying and those kinds of behaviors that unfortunately happen. So I just want to encourage families that if you're hearing that from your children, please reach out immediately to the school. It's really important to be in communication about that. We don't want that kind of behavior happening. I also ask, families to model good behavior at home regarding those types of comments. But just please be in communication with your school administration if anything like that's happening, even if you're not sure, right? If you're not sure whether it's really a pattern or exactly what's happening, because sometimes the information we get from our kids, it's hard to sort of figure out exactly what's going on. But please just reach out to the school. So just want to encourage that as we get into this time of year where patterns are starting to get established. So thanks.
I would just like to once again congratulate and thank our retirees with 20-plus years of service. Thank you for your contributions to the families and students of the Westerville City School District. And finally, in closing this evening, I would just like to encourage us all to remember that on this day, 22 years ago, over 3,000 innocent Americans lost their lives. And so to remember those lives that were lost, remember the first responders, their courage and valor in responding to the emergency, those who are still with us, that responded to the scenes, that are experiencing health conditions and psychological conditions. This is one of the most horrific days in American history that I think is deserving of us to never forget what happened on that day and the response of our nation to that tragedy.
Thank you. Moving on to dates, times, and locations of next meetings. The board will meet here in regular session on Monday, September 25th, 2023 at 6 p.m. And with that, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved?
Second.
Mr. Bell?
Yes.
Mrs. Altman?
Yes.
Mrs. Davidson?
Yes. And we're adjourned.